Hi everyone, my name is Erin Lomax and I am the Education Specialist here at the Smithsonian Marine Ecosystems Exhibit. Thank you so much for visiting us today. What we do here is we try to model ecosystems. So what that means is that each of our large exhibits is a model ecosystem of what we'd find out in the wild. This particular ecosystem here is our seagrass bed ecosystem, and we find a lot of seagrass beds in the Indian River Lagoon. The Indian River Lagoon runs for 156 miles down the east coast of Florida, and the average depth is only about 4 feet. Seagrass beds are important for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is that it is a nursery habitat for a lot of the juvenile animals in the lagoon. That means that a lot of these animals will spend their young lives in the lagoon, and then when they're a little older and a little bigger, they'll move out to deeper water. There are 7 different species of seagrass in the Indian River Lagoon. We have 2 different species that are represented here in our seagrass ecosystem. The first one is turtle grass. It's the seagrass that's got a flat blade. And then we also have manatee grass, which is the skinnier, rounder seagrass that you see. Now, if you look closely, you might notice that there are oxygen bubbles coming up out of this seagrass bed. And that's because seagrasses, just like plants on land, use the sun to photosynthesize. It also adds oxygen back into our environment, and that's what the seagrasses are doing, not only in our exhibit here, but out in the lagoon as well. And just like plants on land, seagrasses also use carbon dioxide. One of the important things that seagrass beds do is something called carbon sequestering. So they take that excess carbon dioxide from our atmosphere and they actually store it or sequester it around their root systems. So seagrasses can actually help mitigate some of the impacts of climate change. So you might notice that there's some fuzzy looking stuff on the walls of this tank. That's actually algae. Algae is a type of plant that we see in aquatic environments. Now, usually when we hear algae, it has a negative connotation, but not all algae is bad. And in fact, algae can be a very important part of a lot of marine animals' diets, including the animals that we find in seagrass beds. So we like to let a little bit of that algae grow because it's food for our animals. You might also notice there's some fuzzy stuff growing on some of the blades of seagrass in this exhibit. That's a type of a plant called an epiphyte that grows on top of something else. And just like the algae on the walls, it's food for some of the animals in this tank. So there are some threats to our seagrass beds, even here locally. The first one is boat scarring, which is when a propeller from a boat destroys parts of the seagrass beds because they're in shallow water. The second one is nutrient runoff. So this could be stormwater runoff that brings a lot of the nutrients from the land, things like oils and fertilizers and pet waste, and it gets dumped into the lagoon. That can trigger what's called an algae bloom, which blocks out enough of the sunlight that the seagrasses are not able to photosynthesize, and it's at that point that we sometimes see seagrass die-offs. As you go through the aquarium, if you're interested and want to know more about a certain exhibit, just use your phone to scan the QR code that's on that tank for more videos.